Hello, Lisa here. Welcome back to my channel. If I sound a little frazzled, it's because this is my third attempt at filming this video today because I have dogs who are needy and a wife who needed a towel and all the other things that just happen when you're trying to make a video on YouTube. Anyways, this week we're talking about the devil. So first, let me tell you what this is in case you don't already know or you're new to my channel or new to this series. This is Tarot Memoirs, and in this series I talk about a tarot card. I'm working my way through the major arcana, and then I will be getting into the minors by grouping the ones together, the twos together, and so forth, all the way up through the kings of every single suit. So we will cover all of the cards of the tarot. And what I like to do is read some passages about the meaning of the card, discussing the meaning based on some things that stand out to me in my favorite tarot books. I like to show 10-ish, maybe sometimes a little bit more images from my favorite tarot decks or from tarot decks that I've recently acquired or whatnot. So you have some examples of the card. And then I like to share some personal stories, memoirs, are sort of the ways that these archetypes show up for me in my day-to-day life. I've gotten a lot of feedback that you guys find the series helpful, that you are finding that it does help you to connect more with the cards and how they apply to your day-to-day real life. They certainly help me to do that just in the process of putting the content together to put these videos up. It's been very helpful to me. So I hope you really enjoy this. As always, if you like my channel, if you like this content, if you like this video, please click the little thumbs up down below or leave a comment or both. That sort of engagement really helps my channel and I really appreciate it. So with that being said, let's just dive right into it. We'll see if the doggies stay settled. Speaking of which, that's Conehead Bruno on that side, and that's Shayla over there on that side. And if we're lucky, they will stay put for the duration of this video. Cross your fingers. All right, so first, getting into Rachel Pollack's 78 Degrees of Wisdom, some pieces that stood out to me. Okay, I'm going to put our little card back up so you have something to look at besides my tipped down face. In order to understand the esoteric value of the devil, we must first consider its more usual meanings as a force of illusion and oppression. The main illusion is materialism, a term which we usually think of as an over-concern with money, but which more properly means the view that nothing exists beyond the world of the senses. Now, I really liked that idea that it was like it's about diving into the senses and being hyper-focused on sort of instant gratification from a sensory point of view. I liked that definition of materialism. The devil has come to symbolize misery. When we look at the two figures, however, we do not observe any discomfort in their faces or posture. Notice also that the chains do not really hold them. The large loops can easily come off of their necks. So there's like large loops around their necks. The devil's power rests in the illusion that nothing else exists. Further on, she says, the devil's posture, one hand up and one down, recalls the magician, where Trump 1 raises a wand to heaven, bringing down spiritual power. The devil's torch points to earth, signifying the belief that nothing exists beyond the material, which I really liked that sort of way that this mirrors the magician card. And as some of you may have heard, or may not have heard actually, because I certainly didn't until somewhat recently, the devil card also mirrors the lovers. We've got the two figures in this card that are mirroring the lovers. So let's see if I have anything else in here. Yes, I do. Here we go. The devil can indicate a narrow, materialistic view of life. It can mean any form of misery or depression, especially feeling chained or imprisoned, with the illusion that no alternatives are possible. If it appears in connection with the lovers, it shows that a relationship which began with love has turned into a trap. The devil signifies being the slave of your desires rather than acting the way you think is best. Earlier, we observed the calm on the faces of the chained men and women. This indicates the acceptance of a bad situation. Eventually, we come to view our unhappy conditions as normal and may even fight against change. The devil reversed, on the other hand, indicates an attempt to break loose from some misery or bondage, either real or psychological. The person no longer accepts his or her situation and moves towards liberation. Paradoxically, it is precisely at such a time that we feel our unhappiness and the limitation of our lives more strongly. Before you can slip off the chains, you must become conscious of them. Therefore, people who are undergoing some process of liberation, say leaving home, psychotherapy, or a difficult divorce, often find themselves far more unhappy than when they blindly accepted their oppressed condition. And I thought that was really powerful because the thing is, when we're in a situation that's super toxic, we normalize it. We don't always see that it's toxic. We don't necessarily feel like it's as bad as maybe it really is. And so this talks about that I wanted to say a really horrible example, and I don't know if this is appropriate or totally inappropriate. It's probably inappropriate. So I'm not going to say it. But it just makes me think of situations where people end up really complacent. And we're not complacent because we consciously think this is a crappy situation, I'm going to stay in it. I mean, that does happen, but that's not really what this is talking about so much. It's also talking about when we just don't realize how crappy it is because it's become normal. It's become our normal. And yet, when we realize that something's wrong with our situation, that we are truly unhappy, or that it's not working for us, or that it's toxic in some way, that's when we really start to feel miserable. That's when we feel most acutely trapped. And I really liked that it talked about that. So good on you, Rachel Pollack. Good job. Not that you need my pats on the head, because I just not talking. Foot and mouth disease right now. Anyways, moving on to Benabel Wen's Holistic Tarot. Some pieces that I highlighted in here about the devil. And I have to put this book down because it's way too heavy to hold up. The Devil card is about bondage to the material and superficial, preference for instant gratification over delayed gratification, and as a result, the seeker is being bound to a less than ideal present physical condition, which is a very matter-of-fact way of saying a very similar thing to what Rachel Pollack said. The card is a warning that there are negative influences preventing the seeker from attaining his or her goals. The seeker must break free of the bondage. Further down, she says, the devil is not a literal beast or demon. The devil personifies human selfishness and indulging in that selfishness. When the devil card appears in a reading, it indicates the temptations and vice that manifest as obstacles obstructing the attainment of our higher goals. In reverse, the devil symbolizes the removal of bondage. So these two books are very much in agreement about sort of what the devil stands for. Although one has a more esoteric approach and one has a slightly more practical and earthy kind of approach, they both really get the point across. And in Melissa Sanova's book, she has an action word for every major arcana at least. And the one here is, I am choosing. And I think that's really powerful because in the devil, there is a clear choice to be in the circumstance that you're in. You have chosen not to notice. You've chosen not to leave. There is an acceptance of the present circumstance, for sure. So here's what she says, or the bits that I highlighted. This part here, sorry. I'm just going to preface this by saying this part that I highlighted, this first part, was so potent for me. I just wanted to stand up, wild applause. This is such a great passage. That being said, who could create a better hell for us than ourselves? Who knows our weaknesses? Who knows how to make us feel low and dirty and worthless? Who is ready to exploit those vulnerabilities and hurt us at a moment's notice? Yep, ourselves. We don't always chain ourselves up without help. Peer pressure, poor guidance from parents, whatever your path is, at some point you have a choice to make. Let's see. Do I wear this chain or not? Do I drink to excess? Do I treat this person like crap? Do I hurt someone just because I can? Do I steal? Do I judge? Should I take this action or make this choice just because I can and then run over whoever might get in the way? These choices are ours to make, and I have the feeling that the older we get, the heavier our chains get and the harder it is to take them off. Yes, Rachel Sanova. Yes. Sorry, Melissa Sanova. Rachel Sanova. Apparently Rachel Pollack and Melissa Sanova have merged and have become one person. That would actually be kind of magical. Anyway, moving on. The Devil Inverted. This card tells us about a foggy time. You're not sure where to go, or what to do, but you're about 2 steps away from the fog lifting. There's also another passage here about the Devil Upright. I think it comes down to 2 things, fear and doubt. Fear that we're not as good as everyone else, and the doubt that allows that fear to trickle in. And boy, I could talk about fear for a million hours. I really could. Fear is often at the root of most of our issues around worth, around feeling our personal power. These things are all really, really important and poignant messages for us. So let's look at some cards. Before we do, I just kind of want to share that I think the Devil was a card that, not I think, the Devil has been a card that has been a bit of a turnoff for me in classic decks because of how it portrays a creature that, to me, has references to Pan and to Greek mythology and to other figures that are known for temptation and similar themes, but kind of twisted into something really dark. I like that the books really do separate the devil from this creature or this beast and really puts the responsibility back on us. That's important to me personally. So that's a good card. So this one's the Rider-Waite. This is the Centennial Edition. So it has like sort of that, I'm going to say, dingier looking coloring. It's a little more muted and less glaring, which I really like. Next, I have my Marseille version of the devil. So this figure looks like happy and almost charming. But the two figures that are chained up here, they have tails, which is really interesting. I don't know if we're supposed to suspect that these creatures that are chained are non-human or are like a side of ourselves. It's kind of interesting. I'm still learning about the Marseille, so I don't have a lot of feedback on this one, but it's an interesting image. Next, I have the devil from the Mary L. Tarot. I love every card in this deck. Fantastic. And in this one, we actually see, where are our two chained figures? I feel like I'm not seeing them, and I know that they're here somehow. Interesting. I'm curious, do you see figures chained in this image, or do we just see the image, like the in-your-face image of the actual devil? I know some of you are hardcore Mary L. lovers, and I don't remember what the story is in this particular card, but I feel like I'm not seeing something that I used to see or that I feel like I should be seeing. So I'd be curious. If you have the Mary L., tell me down below how you equate this image to either the Rider-Waite or the Marseille or the Thoth version of this card. Because, yeah, it's beautiful, but I'm not seeing the chained upness that I'm used to seeing in devil cards. So that's the Mary L. Next, we have the Gil Tarot. This is a fantastic devil, although it's really all about the beastie, or at least it looks to be. There's a lot of dynamic energy in the card, like the beastie is drooling, like he's like hungry after these figures. The figures are, it's this one here on this side here is like rushing towards the other figure, like she's gonna go pounce them and like, you know, do bad things, do naughty things. I don't know. There's a lot of energy and dynamics in this card, so that's kind of cool. Oh, sorry, this is the Gil Tarot, in case I didn't say it. I think I did. Those are the backs. Next, we have the devil from the Naked Heart Tarot. And this one, to me, it's as if the figures themselves are trapped within the devil, which I think is kind of interesting. A lot more minimalist, this one. Sometimes I have to look at them before I hold them up because this is fun. This is from the Little Bitty Fairy Tarot. It's a Lo Scarabeo mini deck. It does come in a bigger version, but I only have a little mini one. And we still see these little figures chained, caught up in this devil's lair. The devil from the Everyday Witch, I don't know, man. This feels... I mean, I get it. This devilly character is offering the children ice cream and money and, like, clearly tempting them while their kitties are like, no, don't trust him. No, don't trust him. This feels a little bit more like the card is portraying the temptation or this external force working on you. And I don't know that that's really how I view the devil. But it is a clever image. I love that there's like a volcano erupting in the background. Do you see that? Excuse me, I'm losing my voice because I'm doing a lot of filming today. But yeah, love that. Also really love the devil in the Bonefire Tarot. This girl is literally being cradled and held by the tarot, by her vices, by her desire to hide away from the world, so she's got a cigarette in her mouth, there's wine, like she's clearly just like, I don't want to deal, and this guy is making sure that I don't have to deal. So there's definitely, I see all that avoidance and all that like pulling away from the world and not taking responsibility really shines through in this card for me. That's the Bonefire. In the Anna K Tarot, boy, there is some serious debauchery in this card. Like, this is probably one of the most explicit, I guess I would say, cards that I've seen depicting the devil, where it's very much about diving into desire and physical sensation and the flesh, which when you read about the traditional, and even in Rachel Pollack's book, I didn't highlight any of those sections, but there's a lot of talk about sex and about the distraction of sex and of the, you know, that definitely plays a role in the devil card for sure. For sure. And this card definitely shows it. This is the Anarchy. Excuse me. Sorry to keep clearing my throat. This is a beautifully done devil from the Arcana Tarot. This deck is it's all black and white like this, but all the minors are playing card pips. And then the majors are just really beautifully and artistically done. Very classic, this one. My Mom's Tarot. I just get so happy every time I pull up these cards. Here again, we have some figures. There are some chains, but they're very thin, fine chains. Like these creatures could very easily escape their predicament here. And you can see almost that they're beginning to identify with their devil monster friend. Like this one has grown horns, and this one has fire spouting out of her head. And so there's definitely this element of getting lost in this world, for sure. Like getting sucked in a way. Mom's Tarot. The Pagan Otherworlds. This is such a creepy image to me. So we have our devil figure, and then you can see the faces of the people that it's like absorbed in its energy here. And this to me again speaks to losing yourself. When you're in a devil space, you lose yourself. You lose that truth of who you are, because you're so distracted by these the sensory input that you're getting from your devilish habits or experiences. And finally, the devil card from the Moonchild Tarot, which shows, again, two figures. We don't see, I think, physical chains here, but we do see very much depicted the idea of oppression, rather, not repression, of oppression pictured. A very dynamic image. Moonchild. So those are the card images that I am sharing for the devil card. And let's get into some memoir-y things. I always look at my notes because otherwise I would lose my place. Because I have the worst memory of all time. And I apparently need a drink because my throat is going. My Little Pony is one of my vices. Got a really fun one. Anyway. Okay. Excuse me. I should have tried talking like as I was drinking water. That was not a good move. So, to me, when the devil shows up in a light way in my life, it is when I am consciously noticing those habits that are brought about from dysfunctional upbringing, where I see the results of abuse, where I see old coping strategies that are now toxic. They're no longer coping strategies because I'm an adult and I don't need them. I'm not in those environments anymore. And sometimes those coping strategies are very unhealthy. So when the devil shows up for me in a really like positive way, it's because, like, at least how I perceive that energy in my life, it's when I'm actually having that moment of awareness of like, oh, I'm being that person that doesn't serve me. I'm caught up in those old habits, in those old stories, and I'm letting those things define me and oppress me and hold me down. So when I'm able to notice those things and really bring awareness to, I guess, the chains that I carry, I do a much, much better job of just being mindful and present. And some of these themes you're going to hear me talk about run through several of the major arcana because these show up in slightly different ways for me. But definitely in a light way, when I'm able to really notice, I can redirect, and it's a really powerful thing. So I might notice that I am like on a freight train down like toxic land, and I'm about to have a really unhealthy interaction because of these old things that weigh me down or that make me feel stuck. And I could handle that as if, well, it's not my fault that they're there, so whatever, you get what you get kind of thing. But when I'm at my best, when the devil is showing up in a light way, and when I'm casting off those chains, is when I'm noticing that, and I am consciously steering that train in a new direction. And that's really powerful, and it takes more work than I feel like it should have to because of my upbringing and because of that conditioning that I've experienced. But when I do it, it's really empowering and liberating, and it gets me away from that feeling of being chained to like my past and to the things that don't serve me. Shadow, I would say really it's when I slip into avoidance land. Now, avoidance land looks a number of different ways for me. It can look like just nonstop binging on TV because I don't want to be quiet. I don't want to let thoughts in. And I tend to do that sort of thing when I am dealing with something stressful that I'm in I don't want to deal land. When I'm like, I just want to be in my blissful, chained up state and I don't want to think about it and I don't want to deal. So I might have a bunch of wine, or I might, lose myself in a series of really crappy television, which, by the way, I still really enjoy. I'm not shaming myself for my TV interests, but sometimes I notice that when I'm really craving a lot of TV, it's because I'm not wanting to deal with something. Something is weighing on me, and I'm like, no, I need to step off. And I think sometimes that's totally fine. I think sometimes we need a break. But sometimes avoidance goes too far, and it becomes complacency with a situation, and we're not really facing anything head on. So that's where that shows up for me in like an everyday shadow way. I think if I were to think about times in my life when the devil energy has been present, or when I've cast off those chains in a very conscious way, one of them would be when I quit smoking. I think that's a classic devil moment, like when you're casting off the chains. You're like, I'm not going to let this habit tie me down anymore. I am done with this. I quit smoking. This was years ago. But I think that's totally a devil moment, and I think it totally counts. Another one, let's see. I guess that's probably the biggest one I can think of right now. I thought I had another one noted, but I didn't. So yeah, I'm going to say quitting smoking. Quitting smoking for sure was like a momentous moment in my life when I cast off chains. There's also times when I've had to leave dysfunctional relationships or abusive relationships, and those also are the exact same thing. You have that unhappiness when the weight and the reality and the truth of your situation sort of sinks in, and like we read about, or like I shared with you from the books, like there's that moment where you feel almost more miserable when you realize you're stuck or you feel trapped or whatever in your circumstances, but then there's the liberation and the empowerment that comes from like, no, I'm not going to live this way anymore, and you cast that off and you step forward. And that is definitely a point in time in your life when you're going to experience enormous growth, is when you say, no more, I'm going to be aware of this, I'm not going to just avoid and not deal, and I'm going to move forward. So that is my big thing I'm going to share this week for the devil. So I hope that this was helpful for you, and as always, I hope you engage with this content in some way. So either comment down below, or if it's more useful to you or it feels too exposing to talk about your like personal stuff on YouTube, which I totally get, you could come on over to the Facebook group. We have Supportive Tarot. Right now, at the time I'm filming this, there's like less than 200 people in there, so it's not a humongous group, but it might be good to bounce stuff off of people. Or if you just want to engage with this privately, please still engage, because I think that looking at the archetypes of the tarot and how they apply in your actual real life is an invaluable exercise. And to help you with that, I like to provide a few journal prompts every single week when I do this series. These journal prompts are coming from the book Journaling the Tarot, a little book of big questions by Andy Matzner. Here are the questions I have chosen for this week's video relating to the devil. Who or what is limiting you? How? And what is your next step? That was question 1. Question 2, what pisses you off and what can you do about it? I love that one. 3, how is fear shaping your life? How can you make peace with that fear so that you can move beyond it into freedom? 4, how are the ghosts of your past still influencing your life? And 5, what seems impossible? How do you know? And what is your next step? So thank you again so much for joining me for Tarot Memoirs. I will see you all again next week when we are tackling the Tower. So that ought to be fun. Anyways, I will see you all again later. Talk to y'all soon. Bye.